You may or may not already know that early this morning 2 police constables were attacked and stabbed in Leicester Square. A female constable suffered what's been called a serious stab wound to her arm, which may be life-changing, and a male constable who was stabbed 3 times in the neck and once in the chest. It's said that the man was tasered to the ground before the 2 constables entered into what they call a tussle, where they received the majority of their injuries. Police have said this is not a terror-related incident. I mean, of course it's not. It's highly unlikely that any terrorist incident will target police, as the goal is to cause widespread panic and harm as many people as possible in the process. Taking out a cop or 2 doesn't exactly achieve that goal. However, I've no doubt it will be used again to make it seem that police are constantly under attack, and will use this to prevent people filming in public. Again. And for those auditors watching, when police try to tell you that you can't film because a colleague was attacked, remember to remind them that it wasn't a terror-related incident. One bystander said the officers detained the man, and as they were searching him, he suddenly produced this long weapon with a blade at the end. He stabbed the female officer first with the weapon, and then he was tasered. But he then got up and produced a silver knife from inside his trousers and stabbed and slashed the male officer in the neck. Moments later, there were police coming from everywhere, and the suspect was tasered repeatedly, again and again by reinforcements. It was shocking to see, especially at this time with the Queen's lying in wait and funeral and the sad mood of the country. There are armed police all over central London at the moment, and it is lucky he was not shot dead. A local worker told how he heard screams and the sound of the tasers being fired. He said, "I ran out onto the street and saw the man on the ground with lots of wires coming out of him. He was shouting out with a London accent and still seemed to be struggling as police were holding him down." Within minutes there were hundreds of police in the area and cordons were set up. It was very scary and seemed to erupt out of nothing. A source has said that both of the constables have suffered potentially life-changing injuries but are expected to survive. Superintendent Justin Brown of the Metropolitan Police's Central West Command Unit, responsible for policing Westminster, said, "Everyday police officers go out on the streets to keep their communities of London safe. In doing so, they often have to put themselves in the way of danger, putting their own welfare at risk in order to protect others. The actions of these 2 officers and their colleagues exemplifies the key value of courage that runs through the core of the Metropolitan Police, and they will be offered all the support they need as they begin their recovery from this terrifying incident." The Metropolitan Police said on Friday 16th of September at around 0600 hours, police encountered a male with a knife in the area of Leicester Square. 2 officers received stab wounds and are currently being treated in hospital. We await further updates on their conditions. Taser was deployed and male was arrested on suspicion of grievous bodily harm and assaulting an emergency worker. He was taken to hospital for treatment, where he remains at this time. Inquiries into the circumstances surrounding the incident are ongoing. Now, I'm not mocking the fact that 2 people have been injured. Regardless to who you are, if you are acting lawfully, even in the execution of your duties as a copper, then you shouldn't expect to be stabbed or assaulted in any way. But this is what's becoming of our country, I believe, because of 2 things. First of all, the sentencing for such is pathetically piss poor. They've already said that the suspect was arrested on suspicion of grievous bodily harm and an assault on an emergency worker. Why not attempted murder? He stabbed someone in the neck. Surely that covers an act of attempted murder. Because it fucking should do. In fact, any assault with a knife where the penetration is more than a certain amount, or stabbing somebody in a certain area of the body, should be made attempted murder with no mitigating factors other than self-defence. The fact that Sadiq Khan has done little to prevent the explosive use of knives in London is a direct link to today's attack. The second thing that I believe is caused this is the number of people being brought into the UK from places where carrying a knife is commonplace, where using a knife is second nature in order to settle a dispute. People come here with a certain mindset from certain cultures and plopped right into the middle of generally normal people who don't go around shanking others for looking at them the wrong way or for taking their parking space. I mean, you wouldn't take a wild dog and pop it straight into a kennel with house-trained dogs and not expect the wild dog to act very differently, and in many cases, if not all cases, attack the house-trained dogs. You would introduce the wild dog to the way of life it now needs to adhere to in order to get it used to how it is expected to behave. But what we do as a country is invite anyone and everyone in, regardless of their background, with little to no checks, and stick them straight into a town or village somewhere with no idea of the consequences of these actions. Now again, this is not to mock or take the piss out of the police who had been attacked, but rather to point out the patheticness of the legal system we currently have, and potentially, in my opinion, why these problems might be occurring.